Hello, welcome to another edition of Books and Things with Tom, and of course I am Tom. And today's guest is Michael Kilday. Michael comes from Woolkit,
Connecticut.
And I'm not even going to try to explain where that is. It's way up in the north end of the country. He's a Kappa board member, winner of a 2013 Connecticut Press Award for nonfiction for his book, Yippie's Lament. Mike has been a friend of mine for several years, and as a Kappa member, we've discussed books on several occasions, and so I would like to introduce you to Mike Kilday. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for having me here.
I was going through your bio, and I said, wow, this guy's been busy. He's a graduate of Boston University, and with a Bachelor of Science degree in English education. He worked at as a high school English teacher for a short period of time. He also worked for years as a newspaper journalist, and for the past 35 years, he has worked as a software engineer for a large Northeastern health insurance company. And what prompted you to start writing books?
What prompted me to start writing books? I've been writing ever since I was a teenager. I started off writing poetry, as most people do, because it's easier to get your thoughts out without having a big framework of a story around it and whatever. So I wrote poetry for many years. I have a file folder that's full of it. And then I kind of graduated to writing stories. I have written 3 books thus far. They're all nonfiction because of certain events that have occurred in my life, like the death, the untimely death of one of my sons. Kind of shifted the course of my focus.
Yeah, we know what that's like, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And so it kind of turned me real serious in my subject matter. So I wrote a series of books called Truth Never Changes, and they have to do with climate change, pole shift, the psychological effects, as well as the spiritual aspects of it, and the prophecies, surrounding it. And I spent many years researching it. That all stemmed from a visit to a deep trance medium back in 1979.
Wow. Yeah.
Where it was just all laid on me. I didn't ask for any of this. And so, because of my engineering background, I simply can't accept things at face value. And I did all the research, and that's these 2 books.
Yeah.
That's what came of it.
Now, I have both these books. I read the first, and I really haven't gotten too far into the second one, and that's just because life changes and you move to different things. I don't get that much time to read anymore. But I found the book fascinating. It's just a lot of information in there.
Yeah.
And it's a good read.
And what's happening with climate change has 2 components.
Yeah.
There's the human component where we're destroying the environment, pure and simple.
Yeah.
And we're causing a lot of the weather conditions that are so extreme. But there's another component, and that is nature's component. It's going through a pole shift right now.
Yeah.
And the process is continuing. When you get to the second book, you will see all the scientific evidence that supports that.
Well, we see that now with, I know a farm down here in Pawcatuck that's lost about 6 feet of land where the water is coming in closer and closer. And it's all, salt marsh hay. And he's losing it. And that's unfortunate because that's expensive stuff.
Yeah.
So. Now, what about Yippie's Lament?
Yippie's, I'll tell you why I wrote a Yippie's Lament. There was 2 basic reasons. One reason was I was one, and I was out, in the streets in Boston and in Berkeley and San Francisco, demonstrating, protesting, against the war, rioting in some cases. And so I kind of learned lessons there that I wrote into the book. It really began as a journal, I kept track over the years, and we're talking about from the 80s to the present day, of all the events that were occurring, in our society. And so as I was writing this, my first son, who has since passed away, he came home from high school one day and told me what he was learning in history about the Vietnam War. And I didn't recognize anything that he was saying.
I wonder why.
And so I kind of felt that to me, it seemed a blatant case of revisionist history. Yeah. Where for their own means or whatever, the powers that be see fit to sanitize certain experiences, and only the people that go through them really know how they really were. Yeah. And that's really why I wrote this book.
And they're waiting for all of us to die so we can't argue with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the reason that I wrote all my books, and they're nonfiction, they're not really stories per se, although there's story elements incorporated in all of them, is to open new vistas of opportunity for people of an intellectual, moral, and spiritual nature. They're not meant to entertain anybody. Okay. They are meant to inform people and to awaken the public sensibility to what is going on around them. I see myself as a philosopher and historian. To me, writing is a medium to convey information. Yeah. Not necessarily also to tell stories, but I haven't really gotten to the point yet where I'm willing to release any of my stories.
Well, it's educational, and you're right. If it's not entertainment, it's educational, and people can learn from it.
Yes. And that's really my aim right now. What I see happening in the public sector is kind of perfectly clear to me, and I go through it, in the book because it started back in the 80s. Yeah. The GOP has their orders from the owners of our society, and by owners I mean the rich, the corporations, all the political powers, to rescind the New Deal. Yeah. And you see everything that they're doing, all of FDR's programs, they never wanted them, and they're trying to eliminate them, piece by piece.
And they are, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Yes.
And that's a shame because it's been so much help over the years to people that have. Not everybody can save $1. Not everybody can make $1 million and keep it. And these people have to have help.
Yes. And what, you just want to let people just die? Kick them to the curb? And I don't think living in a democracy really means that. That's more like living in a monarchy. Yeah. Or a fascist state that would do that to people.
Yeah, because they want you to go back to 10 cents an hour working 90 hours a week.
Yeah. With no health care and no benefits.
No benefits.
And no pension and no nothing.
And live in the corporate houses.
I've seen them.
And work for the boss.
Yeah, I've seen some of them.
And it's a shame because we're supposed to be advancing. Instead, we're going backwards in a lot of cases.
Yep, we are.
The middle class has disappeared.
Well, they want to take us back to the robber barons. Yeah. And I saw The Lone Ranger recently, the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed that it's really being panned in the press, because I've read some reviews and they really have bad things to say about them. Yeah. But I get the point of the movie. There's one line in The Lone Ranger where the Lone Ranger says, after he's been screwed over by the powers that be, and Atano is trying to get him to wear that mask, and he doesn't want to wear the mask. He says, if these people represent the law, I prefer to be an outlaw. And I thought, that's what the hippies and yippies were saying. Yeah. As he's saying that, I'm realizing that's what the hippies and yippies were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, because they didn't want to work for the man.
No. What I see around me is so distressing, the injustice and it's being perpetuated by the quote-unquote law. Yeah. So that makes me an outlaw if I disagree with them.
Yes, it does.
And I think that's probably one of the points of the book.
Yeah, I wrote an article on Facebook the other day about, yesterday as a matter of fact, about illegal aliens. And I said, an illegal alien can get all the benefits that a person gets. Now, first of all, an illegal alien to me means it's not legal.
Right.
Now, if you go out and steal your book and get arrested, that's also illegal.
Yes.
But you're going to go to jail. We're going to feed you. We're going to clothe you. We're going to give you health insurance. We're going to give you all kinds of programs while you're in there, education and everything. But the illegal alien gets all the same thing, only doesn't have to go to jail.
I know.
Now, somewhere along the way, I think, yeah, maybe I just misunderstand it. I'm not sure. But I think there's something wrong there.
There was something definitely wrong.
Yeah. But anyway, it looks like a great book. I haven't got that copy yet. But you were going to read a page out of there?
Yes. In fact, I'd like to read two things out of here.
Okay. Excuse me.
One is the dedication.
Okay.
Because, you know, every book has a dedication to my wife, Debbie, because I love her so much. Or, you know, something along those lines.
Keep it nice. She's going to see this.
I know. But I wrote something that I thought kind of fit with the overall purpose of the book and what I was trying to say. Mm-hmm. It's a quote from an historical personage. What is happening to our young people? They disrespect their elders, they disobey their parents, they ignore the law. They riot in the streets inflamed with wild notions. Their morals are decaying. What is to become of them?
And who wrote that?
Plato.
Oh my God.
So, as you can see, as you can see, it's being recycled. You know, the whole process here. You know, the young and the old contesting over morals, values, or whatever, as it pertains to building character, has been a concern for many, many centuries.
But that could have been written today.
Yes, it could. And
that's scary.
I could see this as something that was written by a politician in the 50s.
Yeah.
Who's looking at the beatniks, you know, hanging on the street corner, and that's what he would have to say about them.
The beatniks, the hippies, the Greenwich Village, and these are all bad people.
I was at Woodstock. There weren't bad people there.
Yeah.
There were people who just wanted to have fun. They wanted to connect with each other.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful experience if you don't mind a lot of mud and sleeping outside and the torrential downpour on a Friday night and Sunday afternoon.
They had no idea that was going to happen. That was just totally blown. They never expected it. It was just a cornfield or a wheat field, whatever. And
it was a pasture.
Pasture
on a hill.
Yeah. But they did not expect the music to be what it was, which everybody turned into
superstars.
Yeah. And they were nobody in those days. And I missed it because I'm older, and I was probably working with a job or whatever. I may have even been married.
Yeah.
But I just, because I didn't get to go there, because I'd have gone if I were younger. Yeah.
Well, I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
You know,
I was just getting first marriage.
And so, when you're 19 years old, you don't mind any of those things. You don't think about any of those things. You just go there.
Yeah.
If it was today, I would probably not go because I don't really want to camp out.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really what it was.
A little older, a little
well,
change.
Yes. When you get a little older, you start thinking more of comfort.
Yeah. Woodstock 2 didn't really make it.
Woodstock 2 was okay. Woodstock 3 was a disaster.
Was it?
It was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the place burned down.
Oh, jeez.
And actually, that's part of that's in my book because it's a matter of historical record. My book's full of facts, and I speculate on some of those facts. But some of Kyle's friends had gone, and they reported back that it happened in 1999. Vendors were charging people $4 for a bottle of water.
Wow.
And that was part of the reason why they burned the cargo trailers.
Oh, wow.
Because they were rather annoyed.
Yeah.
but I guess it kind of shows you of the difference in the humanities. I mean, that during the original Woodstock, I went there with nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and they gave away the food.
Yeah.
They would feed people, but they gave it away. I mean, and granted, you didn't get a steak, but you got fruit. Then maybe they give you a bowl of brown rice, just so people wouldn't starve.
Yeah. Yeah, so, a lot of stuff went on. I don't know how many thousands were there.
Well, estimates run anywhere from 500,000 to 1 million.
Oh my God. You couldn't do that today.
But I frankly can't see how anyone could have counted them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you couldn't possibly do it today. It's just inconceivable.
You could never get the permits.
No permits. Forget that.
You can
Noah's Ark would never be built either.
But there's a half a page from the note from the author that I want to read, because it kind of tells where I was at going into writing this book and part of my experience. In the summer of 1970, while a college student at Boston University, I stood outside a university administration building called the Castle and watched a gang of students toss furniture out of a second-story window. Chairs, lamps, and end tables hit the grass with a thud or bounced madly for a few seconds in their death throes. They came to rest in a mangled heap of broken pieces. Perhaps these students felt their actions were justified because Nixon had just admitted publicly for the first time that U.S. warplanes had crossed the Cambodian border and struck military targets. These students believed the admission was long overdue, since Nixon had been lying for 2 years about everything else. The leader of the local chapter of the Students for a Democratic Society, which we call the SDS, arrived on the scene to capitalize on the event and set up a soapbox. With a bullhorn, he began to work the crowd. Without warning, a few minutes later, onlookers were surrounded by a fleet of Boston police cruisers, and the head thumping began in earnest. The anti-war movement took on a frightening new dimension for me. The exhilaration, terror, and confusion I felt all blended into one long, terrifying scream, accented by the mad scuffling of shoe leather on the pavement amid a sea of flashing lights. We were no longer dissenters. A line had been crossed, making us common vandals. For the first time, my disillusionment with the cause set in. I never viewed my involvement with the anti-war movement in the same way again. A void was formed, and the demons of doubt and fear rushed in to fill it. A sobering thought surfaced that America was rushing headlong into a much darker place. And so that was a real event that happened at Boston University.
That kind of reminds you of China.
Yes, Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
I mentioned Tiananmen Square in the book too, when they had tanks rolling over people. In fact, my son Kyle also attended Boston University. When he had gone there for one of his visits, we were out in a tent in front of the public communications building, the school that, the particular college of BU that he was enrolled in. And we were sitting at the table having a water or soda or something, and there were some kids sitting at the table. And one of them was talking about what they were talking about in their history class, and it was that event.
Wow.
It just, that's kismet.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there listening to them, and I turned to them and I said, I was there. I was there. I know what happened there. And so I proceeded to tell them kind of what I wrote down in the book, but as much in detail as I could remember about the actual event.
Wow.
And they were kind of amazed,
Yeah.
that someone was talking to them who had actually been there and experienced it. And I think that's the power of the book.
Yeah.
The book was written, at least the first section of it, which I entitled in the hour of our discontent, which is straight out of common sense.
Yeah.
That's a kind of story. There's a lot of allusions in there to various events that occurred, and like Woodstock, like the protests and the demonstrations that I had gone to. But it's from somebody who actually experienced them. It's not somebody who's writing history.
It's not a rumor.
But it's not a rumor. It was an actual event. It happened.
Yeah.
And I was there to experience it. And I think that's what makes the book valuable. And I think one of the reasons that I got that award was because the people who read this book realized that there's some value here.
Yeah.
There's some value when you get the information from the horse's mouth, and it's not sanitized by a corporation or a news media that just doesn't want to inform you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't want you to know everything. They only want you to know what they want to tell you.
Right. Because they have a specific purpose for what they're doing.
And then they'll say, okay, this is what you could know. Just like the newspapers do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
Yeah.
do.
Although the newspapers at one time used to be very straightforward.
Yes, they did.
Yep.
And then the powers to be figured out a way to calm them down.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly what. That's probably a lot to do with the fact that all newspapers now are almost owned by one company.
I think it's 3.
Yeah, 3 companies. Well, that's the way to calm the news down.
Yes, it is.
And you get that little whippersnapper that just wants to report the true stuff, and they just wipe him right out.
Well, actually, there's a place for people like that to go, and it's called Twitter.
Yes.
And Facebook. And they can go out on Twitter and Facebook, and they can communicate directly with the public.
Yeah.
And it might be true that there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
Or people who are out there testing the water and, you know, giving false information. But there's also a lot of true information that you're not getting from anywhere else.
And I know you and I both spend a lot of time on Twitter, and well, me on Facebook. You do Twitter. But the stuff that you learn on there is amazing.
Yep, I've learned a lot.
Yeah, and it's quick. If it happens today, it's on the internet 10 minutes later.
Right.
And
right. It's actually perfect for the pace of our society as it moves along.
Yeah. And if everybody really pays attention to it, and I don't mean to talk about when I got up this morning, I made a couple of eggs and I took a shower. There's so much of that on there that you have to kind of filter through it.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that.
You know.
People who just want to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really associate with that sort.
Yeah.
I more associate with the people who have causes, like the anonymous people, who I find extremely interesting, and very much like we were in the 60s.
Yeah.
You know, the cause-driven, you know, I'm fighting for this, you know, to remedy this injustice, and I'm really pissed off.
I'm not going to take it anymore.
You know, I can understand completely, you know where they're coming from and what's driving them, so I can have a conversation with them, and they're of all ages.
Yeah, they are. There's one on there, Kimberly somebody, and I can't remember who she is, but she just goes after the politicians ruthlessly. Yes. Ruthlessly, and she said she apologized. She said, I can't answer everybody's email because the Facebook has told me not to because it's taking up too much room.
There's one quote that I'd like to give you that pertains to my book.
Mm-hmm.
It's from Thomas Jefferson, and the book is loaded with quotes from Jefferson and Paine and Franklin and all the people who I admire, and who I wish I could be more like them.
I wish we had more people
like them. He said, in regard to self-government and democracy as it unfolds, I have no fear the result of our experiment will be that men may be trusted to govern themselves without a master.
Wow.
So he said that near the end of his life in a letter to John Adams, because they communicated.
Yeah.
And I could think of no better cause than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the purpose of what democracy should be.
It's odd or strange that we read quotes like that, and they can apply to today. You'll probably be able to apply them to 20 years from now. And these things were written 80, 90, 100 years ago. And like the Plato quote, life doesn't change that much, but everybody's being more suppressed all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's just not acceptable. And I think, unfortunately, there's no politicians up there that's strong enough to go up and make any changes.
No, there are no RFKs.
There are none at all.
No.
And it just, yeah, you look at who's running, and then the guy gets in office, they try to either makes himself look like an idiot, or they try to make him look like an idiot, and then there's nobody else to replace him anyway. And I mean, what did we do?
I have some recommendations at the end of the book.
Oh, good. I'll have to read it.
I have some recommendations at the end of the book, because there's no point in creating a historical document that's dead.
Yeah.
It has to be a living document.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought it all the way up to the present day. And I have a 7-point solution in there that yes. Yep.
Huh. Well, I think like today's paper talked about, I mean, Facebook was talking about the Senate has passed this increase in student loans. Doubled it.
Doubled it. 6%.
And not that they were losing money, but they were making money.
I know.
And now they just doubled it. And I just don't understand that. What's the we the people, by the people, for the people love? You know, it just doesn't exist.
No.
We the senators, for the senators.
By the senators.
By the senators, we'll do what we want.
Yep, regardless.
It's just, I don't know. I was never a yippie. I was never, we didn't have anything like that in the 50s. You know, we just.
Beatniks.
Well, the beatniks were actually late 50s, but we had folk music. And they were kind of beatniks, that's true too. That was the, but we had a good time. And they're actually the ones that started all the revolution.
You read anything that Ginsburg wrote, very politically charged.
Yeah.
Very politically charged.
Yeah.
Howl is a political statement. It's a howl of distress at how things are.
And you listen to the music, the folk music, and we've run out of time, unfortunately. I'd like to thank you for being here, and it's been a pleasure seeing you again. And we'll be back again next week. And I'd like to thank everyone for watching. And be sure to email me at santostom.com and santostom at comcast.com. I get it straight. And I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for watching. And thank you, Mike.
Yep. My books are available.
Yes.